afraid of something. It is only a nail which caught you.' They went down, 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 till at last they came to a passage with a door at one end, which was only fastened with a latch. The eldest Princess opened it, and they found themselves immediately in a lovely little wood, where the leaves were spangled with drops of silver which shone in the brilliant light of the moon. They next crossed another wood, where the leaves were sprinkled with gold, and after that another still, where the leaves glittered with diamonds. At last the Star Gazer perceived a large lake, and on the shores of the lake 12 little boats with awnings, in which were seated 12 princes, who, grasping their oars, awaited the princesses. Each princess entered one of the boats, and Michael slipped into that which held the youngest. The boats glided along rapidly, but Lina's, from being heavier, was always behind the rest. 'We never went so slowly before,' said the Princess. 'What can be the reason?' 'I don't know,' answered the Prince. 'I assure you I am rowing as hard as I can.' On the other side of the lake the garden boy saw a beautiful castle splendidly illuminated, whence came the lively music of fiddles, kettle drums, and trumpets. In a moment they touched land, and the company jumped out of the boats, and the princes, after having securely fastened their barks, gave their arms to the princesses and conducted them to the castle. Michael followed and entered the ballroom in their train. Everywhere were mirrors, lights, flowers, and damask hangings. The Star Gazer was quite bewildered at the magnificence of the sight. He placed himself out of the way in a corner, admiring the grace and beauty of the princesses. Their loveliness was of every kind. Some were fair and some were dark, some had chestnut hair or curls darker still, and some had golden locks. Never were so many beautiful princesses seen together at one time, but the one whom the cowboy thought the most beautiful and the most fascinating was the little princess with the velvet eyes. With what eagerness she danced! Leaning on her partner's shoulder she swept by like a whirlwind. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes sparkled, and it was plain that she loved dancing better than anything else. The poor boy envied those handsome young men with whom she danced so gracefully, but he did not know how little reason he had to be jealous of them. The young men were really the princes who, to the number of 50 at least, had tried to steal the princess's secret. The princesses had made them drink something of a philtre, which froze the heart and left nothing but the love of dancing. They danced on till the shoes of the princesses were worn into holes. When the cock crowed the third time, the fiddles stopped, and a delicious supper was served by negro boys, consisting of sugared orange flowers, crystallized rose leaves, powdered violets, cracknels, wafers, and other dishes, which are, as every one knows, the favorite food of princesses. After supper the dancers all went back to their boats, and this time the Star Gazer entered that of the eldest princess. They crossed again the wood with the diamond-spangled leaves, the wood with the gold-sprinkled leaves, and the wood whose leaves glittered with drops of silver, and as a proof of what he had seen, the boy broke a small branch from a tree in the last wood. Lina turned as she heard the noise made by the breaking of the branch. "What was that noise?" she said. "It was nothing," replied her eldest sister. "It was only the screech of the barn owl that roosts in one of the turrets of the castle." While she was speaking Michael managed to slip in front, and running up the staircase he reached the princess's room first. He flung open the window, and sliding down the vine which climbed up the wall, found himself in the garden just as the sun was beginning to rise, and it was time for him to set to his work. That day, when he made up the bouquets, Michael hid the branch with the silver drops in the nosegay intended for the youngest princess. When Lina discovered it she was much surprised. However, she said nothing to her sisters, but as she met the boy by accident while she was walking under the shade of the elms, she suddenly stopped as if to speak to him, then, altering her mind, went on her way. The same evening the 12 sisters went again to the ball, and the Star Gazer again followed them and crossed the lake in Lina's boat. This time it was the prince who complained that the boat seemed very heavy. "It is the heat," replied the princess. "I too have been feeling very warm." During the ball she looked everywhere for the gardener's boy, but she never saw him. As they came back, Michael gathered a branch from the wood with the gold-spangled leaves, and now it was the eldest princess who heard the noise that it made in breaking. "It is nothing," said Lina, "only the cry of the owl which roosts in the turrets of the castle." As soon as she got up she found the branch and her bouquet. When the sisters went down she stayed a little behind and said to the cowboy, "Where does this branch come from?" "Your Royal Highness knows well enough," answered Michael. "So you have followed us?" "Yes, Princess." "How did you manage it? We never saw you." "I hid myself," replied the Star Gazer quietly. The Princess was silent a moment, and then said, "You know our secret. Keep it. Here is the reward of your discretion," and she flung the boy a purse of gold. "I do not sell my silence," answered Michael, and he went away without picking up the purse. For 3 nights Lina neither saw nor heard anything extraordinary. On the 4th she heard a rustling among the diamond-spangled leaves of the wood. That day there was a branch of the trees in her bouquet. She took the Star Gazer aside and said to him in a harsh voice, "You know what price my father has promised to pay for our secret?" "I know, Princess," answered Michael. "Don't you mean to tell him?" "That is not my intention." "Are you afraid?" "No, Princess." "What makes you so discreet, then?" But Michael was silent. Lina's sisters had seen her talking to the little garden boy, and jeered at her for it. "What prevents your marrying him?" asked the eldest. "You would become a gardener too. It is a charming profession. You could live in a cottage at the end of the park, and help your husband to draw up water from the well, and when we get up you could bring us our bouquets." The Princess Lina was very angry, and when the Star Gazer presented her bouquet she received it in a disdainful manner. Michael behaved most respectfully. He never raised his eyes to her, but nearly all day she felt him at her side without ever seeing him. One day she made up her mind to tell everything to her eldest sister. "What!" said she, "this rogue knows our secret, and you never told me! I must lose no time in getting rid of him." "But how?" "Why, by having him taken to the tower with the dungeons, of course," for this was the way that in old times beautiful princesses got rid of people who knew too much. But the astonishing part of it was that the youngest sister did not seem at all to relish this method of stopping the mouth of the gardener's boy, who, after all, had said nothing to their father. It was agreed that the question should be submitted to the other 10 sisters. All were on the side of the eldest. Then the youngest sister declared that if they laid a finger on the little garden boy she would herself go and tell their father the secret of the holes in their shoes. At last it was decided that Michael should be put to the test, that they would take him to the ball, and at the end of supper would give him the philtre which was to enchant him like the rest. They sent for the Star Gazer and asked him how he had contrived to learn their secret, but still he remained silent. Then, in commanding tones, the eldest sister gave him the order they had agreed upon. He only answered, "I will obey." He had really been present, invisible, at the council of princesses, and had heard all, but he had made up his mind to drink of the philtre and sacrifice himself to the happiness of her he loved. Not wishing, however, to cut a poor figure at the ball by the side of the other dancers, he went at once to the laurels and said, "My lovely rose laurel, with the golden rake I have raked thee, with the golden bucket I have watered thee, with the silken towel I have dried thee. Dress me like a prince." A beautiful pink flower appeared. Michael gathered it, and found himself in a moment clothed in velvet, which was as black as the eyes of the little princess, with a cap to match, a diamond aigrette, and a blossom of the rose laurel in his buttonhole. Thus dressed, he presented himself that evening before the Duke of Beloeil, and obtained leave to try and discover his daughter's secret. He looked so distinguished that hardly any one would have known who he was. The 12 princesses went upstairs to bed. Michael followed them, and waited behind the open door till they gave the signal for departure. This time he did not cross in Lina's boat.